going to bring thousands and thousands of businesses and trillions of dollars in wealth back to the good old USA.
Listen to every financial expert, every stock analyst, billionaire, and others. All you hear are recurrent warnings about the imminent fall of the U.S. economy. But how close are we really to this inevitable economic catastrophe? What forces are driving America toward potential financial ruin? Today, we will unravel the world's largest economy, examining whether the fall of U.S. economic dominance is inevitable, or if there's still hope for a course correction. This is not one of the videos you'll click off because you need to know how this will drastically impact you. As we delve into the numbers and expert opinions, how much time do we have left before it all comes crashing down? Is the American economic dream on the verge of becoming a nightmare? Or is there still a path to renewed prosperity and global leadership? The debt bomb. At the heart of America's economic troubles lies a ticking time bomb, the national debt. As of 2024, the U.S. national debt stands at an eye-watering $34 trillion. To put this into perspective, there is over $100,000 debt for every man, woman, and child living in America. If this debt were evenly distributed, each U.S. household would owe nearly $260,000. But it's not just the size of the debt that's concerning. It is the rate at which these debts keep growing. In 2000, the national debt was said to be around $5.6 trillion. In just over 2 decades, it has increased by over 500%. This exponential growth far outpaces the expansion of the U.S. economy or population growth. Former Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Admiral Mike Mullen once stated that the most significant threat to our national security is our debt. His words seem increasingly prophetic as we examine the potential consequences of this massive liability. You might be thinking, hasn't the U.S. always had debt? Why is it such a problem now? The answer lies in the debt-to-GDP ratio. This measure compares a country's debt to its economic output and is a key indicator of a nation's ability to pay its debts. Historically, economists have considered a debt-to-GDP ratio of 60% or less manageable. As of 2024, the U.S. ratio stands at approximately 123%. Historically, the U.S. debt-to-GDP ratio peaked at 106% after World War II, as the nation shouldered the costs of global conflict. It then steadily declined to about 32% by 1981. The current level is unprecedented in peacetime and shows no signs of reversing course. This level of debt puts enormous pressure on the government's ability to respond to crises, invest in infrastructure, or fund social programs. It also makes the USA more vulnerable to economic shocks and less attractive to foreign investors. The consequences of this debt burden are far-reaching. Number 1. Interest payments. As these debts keep growing, so does the interest the government must pay, grows with it. In fiscal year 2023, interest payments on the national debt totaled $475 billion. That's more than the entire defense budget of most countries, and represents money that can't be spent on education, healthcare, or infrastructure. 2. Crowding out effect. As the government borrows more money, it competes with more private borrowers for capital, potentially driving up interest rates and making it more expensive for businesses to invest and grow. 3. Reduced fiscal flexibility. In case you don't know, higher debt levels limit the government's ability to respond to sudden economic crises or natural disasters. This is evident in the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, where concerns about the growing debt influenced many policy decisions. 4. Global economic influence. As the U.S. economy becomes more indebted, it risks losing its status as the world's reserve currency. This could have profound implications for America's global economic and political influence as time unfolds. Former Congressional Budget Office Director Douglas Holtz-Eakin warned in 2021, "We're headed for a Greece-like crisis if we don't change course." While some economists argue that the U.S. has more leeway due to its status as the world's largest economy and issuer of the global reserve currency, the risks of continued debt accumulation are undeniable. The debt problem is exacerbated by structural issues in the U.S. budget. Mandatory spending on programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid continues to grow as the population ages, while political gridlock makes it difficult to either raise revenues or cut spending. Keep watching as we unveil the Federal Reserve Dilemma. The Federal Reserve's Dilemma. The Federal Reserve, America's central bank, finds itself increasingly precarious. Its dual mandate of maintaining price stability and maximizing employment has become a high-wire act in recent years, with higher stakes than ever. In response to the 2008 financial crisis and the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, the Fed embarked on unprecedented monetary easing, slashing interest rates to near zero and engaging in massive quantitative easing programs. These actions were designed to stimulate economic growth and prevent financial collapse. While these policies helped stave off immediate economic disaster, they've created long-term challenges that the Fed is now struggling to navigate. Former Fed Chair Janet Yellen warned in 2019, "I fear that we're not in a position to deal with a severe downturn." Her words seem prescient as we examine the Fed's current predicament. You might think, but surely printing money solves our problems, right? You're wrong. The Fed's balance sheet has ballooned from about $870 billion in 2007 to over $7.5 trillion in 2024. This massive increase in the money supply has contributed to inflationary pressures and asset bubbles, distorting financial markets and potentially sowing the seeds of future crises. Former Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas President Richard Fisher stated in 2016, "We've never had such low interest rates for so long in the history of recorded time." This unprecedented situation underscores the uncharted territory in which the Fed is operating. Structural changes in the economy further complicate the Fed's dilemma. The Phillips curve, which traditionally described the inverse relationship between unemployment and inflation, seems to have broken down. This makes it more challenging for the Fed to predict the inflationary impact of its policies. Moreover, the Fed's ability to respond to future crises has been severely compromised. With interest rates already at historic lows and its balance sheet bloated, the Fed has few tools left in its arsenal to combat the next recession. This limited policy space is a significant concern as the U.S. faces numerous economic headwinds. As former Fed Chair Ben Bernanke noted, monetary policy is not a panacea. The Fed's actions alone cannot address fundamental economic challenges such as productivity growth, income inequality, or fiscal sustainability. These issues require broader policy solutions and political will. Looking ahead, the Fed faces a delicate balancing act. It must normalize monetary policy without triggering a recession, manage inflationary pressures without stifling growth, and maintain its independence in an increasingly polarized political environment. The success or failure of these efforts will have profound implications for the U.S. economy and its global economic leadership. American manufacturing. Once the world's manufacturing powerhouse, the United States has seen its industrial base erode over the past few decades. This decline, often called deindustrialization, has had far-reaching consequences for the American economy and society. In 1970, manufacturing accounted for 24% of U.S. GDP. By 2024, that figure had fallen to just 11%. This stark decline is not just a matter of percentages. It represents a fundamental shift in the structure of the American economy and the nature of work available to millions of Americans. The decline of American manufacturing has left a trail of consequences in its wake. Millions of well-paying blue-collar jobs have vanished, leading to rising income inequality and a hollowing out of the middle class. Once thriving industrial cities in the Midwest and Northeast have struggled to reinvent themselves, creating pockets of economic distress. Persistent trade deficits have added to the nation's debt burden, and the pandemic exposed the vulnerabilities of relying on global supply chains. Some fear that losing manufacturing capacity could stifle innovation, further jeopardizing America's economic future. Former President Trump stated in 2017, "A nation that does not protect prosperity at home cannot protect its interests abroad." This sentiment reflects concerns about the strategic implications of manufacturing decline. You might think, but isn't this just the natural evolution of a developed economy towards services? While it's true that all advanced economies have seen some shift towards services, the extent of deindustrialization in the U.S. is extreme. Countries like Germany and Japan have managed to maintain robust manufacturing sectors while still developing their service industries. In 2024, manufacturing still accounts for about 20% of Germany's GDP. A confluence of factors has driven the decline of U.S. manufacturing. Globalization and the rise of global supply chains have tempted companies to chase lower labor costs abroad. Technological advancements have automated many manufacturing processes, reducing the demand for human workers. Meanwhile, trade policies have been criticized for facilitating the offshoring of jobs, and the strong U.S. dollar has made American goods less competitive in global markets. Stricter environmental regulations have also added to the U.S. production cost. Lastly, a growing gap between the skills needed in modern manufacturing and those possessed by the workforce further complicates the situation. The decline in manufacturing has also had political repercussions. Regions hit hard by manufacturing job losses have seen rising populism and anti-globalization sentiment. This has contributed to political polarization and influenced trade and economic policies. Looking forward, there are debates about how to revitalize American manufacturing. Some advocate for protectionist trade policies, while others emphasize the need for investment in education and workforce training. There's also growing interest in reshoring, bringing manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. But wait a minute, are all these possible? Stick around to find out. The Biden administration has made Made in America a key part of its economic strategy, proposing investments in infrastructure and clean energy manufacturing. However, rebuilding America's manufacturing base will be a complex, long-term challenge. As the U.S. grapples with this issue, it must balance the desire to preserve and create manufacturing jobs with the realities of global competition and technological change. The future of American manufacturing and its role in the broader economy remains uncertain, but its importance to America's economic strength and national security is clear. What has been going on in the educational sector? Let's delve into that. The education crisis. Education has long been seen as the great equalizer in American society, the key to upward mobility and economic prosperity. However, the U.S. education system is viewed as failing to prepare students for the challenges of the 21st century economy, potentially undermining the country's future economic competitiveness. According to the 2022 Program for International Student Assessment, PISA results, U.S. students ranked 30th in math, 18th in science, and 13th in reading among OECD countries. These mediocre results are true, even though the U.S. spends more per student on education than most developed countries. This educational underperformance has serious economic implications. A 2021 study by McKinsey estimated that closing the achievement gap between American students and their peers in better-performing education systems could add $14 trillion to the U.S. economy over the next 80 years. Former Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos stated in 2018, "We are a nation at risk, and we are a nation that continues to fall behind." Her words echo the landmark 1983 report, A Nation at Risk, which warned of a rising tide of mediocrity in American education. Nearly 4 decades later, many of the same concerns persist. The challenges facing the U.S. education system are complex and deeply rooted. Inequality persists, with significant disparities in educational quality and outcomes based on factors like race, socioeconomic status, and location. Teacher shortages, particularly in critical fields, plague many states, driven by low pay and difficult working conditions. Critics argue the curriculum is outdated, prioritizing standardized tests and rote learning over skills vital for the modern workforce. Additionally, a technology gap leaves many schools without basic digital infrastructure, exacerbating educational inequities. Access to early childhood education remains limited, hindering long-term academic success for many children. Finally, soaring college costs and a student loan debt crisis have made higher education increasingly inaccessible. You might be thinking, but doesn't the U.S. have the best universities in the world? While it's true that American universities dominate global rankings, access to higher education is becoming increasingly unaffordable for many Americans. The rising cost of college is dragging economic growth as young adults delay major life decisions like buying homes or starting families due to student debt burdens. Moreover, the focus on 4-year college degrees has led to a neglect of vocational and technical education. This has contributed to skills gaps in many industries, with employers struggling to find workers with the right technical skills. The ongoing education crisis in the U.S. is not confined to the classroom. It casts a long shadow over the nation's economic prospects. Employers report graduates lack crucial workplace skills, hindering innovation and America's technological. Educational disparities threaten economic mobility, solidifying socioeconomic divides. A strong education system is vital for competitiveness in the global knowledge-based economy. Moreover, a better educated population boosts earnings and reduces social support reliance, benefiting government finances. The education crisis isn't just an educational issue, It's a pressing economic concern demanding urgent action. Addressing these educational challenges will require significant investment and reform. Proposals range from increasing teacher pay and reducing class sizes to revamping curricula to focus on 21st century skills. There's also growing interest in alternative models like charter schools and vocational programs. However, education reform is often politically contentious, with debates over issues like school choice, standardized testing, and the role of teachers' unions. Moreover, the decentralized nature of the U.S. education system, with significant control at the state and local levels, can make implementing nationwide reforms challenging. Before you think that's all, keep watching as we are just beginning. The retirement crisis. As the baby boomer generation enters retirement, the United States faces a looming crisis in its social safety net. The convergence of demographic shifts, inadequate savings, and strains on public pension systems threatens to create a perfect storm of retirement insecurity. At the heart of this crisis is the precarious state of the Social Security system. Social Security Trust Fund is projected to be depleted by 2034. Benefits would need to be cut by about 20% unless changes are made. Demographic trends drive this looming shortfall. As the large baby boomer generation retires, fewer workers are paying into the system for each retiree drawing benefits. Meanwhile, many Americans are woefully unprepared for retirement on their own. According to a 2023 Employee Benefit Research Institute survey, 40% of workers report having less than $25,000 in savings and investments. This lack of personal savings makes many Americans heavily reliant on Social Security, exacerbating the strain on the system. Former Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke warned in 2015, the U.S. retirement system is not working well for many Americans. His words seem increasingly prescient as we examine the scale of the retirement crisis. The retirement crisis in America is multifaceted, with various interconnected challenges. Americans live longer, meaning retirement savings need to stretch further, and many underestimate their life expectancy. Traditional pension plans have been largely replaced by defined contribution plans, shifting the burden of saving onto individuals. Inadequate savings rates, driven by stagnant wages, high costs of living, and a lack of financial literacy, compound the problem. Rising healthcare costs, particularly for long-term care, pose a significant risk, as Medicare doesn't cover everything. Low interest rates make it difficult to generate income from savings without taking on more risk. Additionally, the looming Social Security shortfall threatens to reduce future benefits unless addressed. You might think, but can't we just raise the retirement age or increase payroll taxes to fix Social Security? While these are potential solutions, they come with their own set of challenges. Raising the retirement age disproportionately affects lower-income workers with physically demanding jobs, who often have lower life expectancies. Increasing payroll taxes could dampen economic growth and face significant political opposition. The retirement crisis poses a serious threat, placing immense strain on government resources and potentially pushing many seniors into poverty, worsening economic inequality. Reduced consumer spending by retirees struggling financially could hamper economic growth. An increased reliance on social programs like Medicaid would strain government budgets further. Some individuals may need to delay retirement, potentially limiting job opportunities for younger generations. Intergenerational tensions may arise due to the need to support an aging population. Addressing this crisis necessitates a multi-pronged approach. Strengthening Social Security through measures like raising the payroll tax cap, gradually increasing the retirement age, or securing new funding sources is crucial. Expanding access to retirement savings plans, improving financial literacy, and addressing healthcare costs are also key. Finally, encouraging longer working lives through flexible work arrangements and combating age discrimination can provide additional support for those who need or want to work longer. Former Secretary of Labor Robert Reich stated, "The 401k is one of the only things worse than a pension." His provocative statement highlights the inadequacies of the current retirement system and the need for comprehensive reform. The retirement crisis represents a significant threat to America's economic future. Failing to address it could increase seniors' poverty, strain government resources, and potentially drag down economic growth. As the population ages, finding sustainable solutions to ensure retirement security for all Americans becomes increasingly urgent. The innovation gap. For decades, the United States has been at the forefront of technological innovation, leading the world in areas from computing and telecommunications to biotechnology and artificial intelligence. This innovative edge has been a key driver of America's economic growth and global leadership. However, there are signs that America's lead is slipping, with potential long-term consequences for its economic competitiveness. China, in particular, is rapidly catching up in key areas like artificial intelligence, 5G technology, and quantum computing. In 2022, China surpassed the U.S. in the number of international patent applications filed, a symbolic milestone in the shifting landscape of global innovation. Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, warned in 2020, "America's lead in the key technologies of the future is precarious, and China is catching up fast." His words underscore the urgency of addressing America's innovation challenges. The innovation gap facing the U.S. manifests in several key areas. While the U.S. maintains its lead in absolute R&D spending, its investment as a percentage of GDP has stagnated. At the same time, countries like South Korea and Israel have significantly ramped up their R&D commitments. Furthermore, the U.S. lags behind many other nations in STEM education, a potential bottleneck for its future innovative capacity. Restrictive immigration policies could deter global talent from contributing to the American innovation ecosystem. Additionally, aging infrastructure, particularly in areas like broadband internet access, could hinder the development and adopting of new technologies. A decline in government funding for basic scientific research, often the seedbed for breakthrough innovations, further compounds the problem. Concerns persist about the efficiency of technology transfer in moving innovations from research labs to commercial applications. These challenges paint a complex picture, highlighting areas where the U.S. needs to bolster its innovation strategy to maintain its global leadership position. You might think, but doesn't the U.S. still have Silicon Valley and the world's top tech companies? While Silicon Valley remains a powerhouse of innovation, there are concerns about the concentration of technological progress in a few large companies. This concentration could stifle competition and limit the spread of innovation throughout the broader economy. Other countries are making concerted efforts to develop their tech hubs and attract top talent. Cities like Shenzhen in China, Tel Aviv in Israel, and Bangalore in India are emerging as significant centers of innovation. The potential consequences of losing the innovation race are far-reaching. Economic growth, fueled by productivity gains through innovation, could stagnate. National security could be jeopardized, as cutting-edge technologies often have dual civilian and military uses. Fewer high-paying jobs may be created without thriving, innovative industries. America's global influence, partly based on technological leadership, could diminish. Additionally, the ability to set global standards, often held by the country at the forefront of technological development, could be lost. Addressing the innovation gap requires a multifaceted strategy. Increasing both public and private sector investment in research and development is essential. Strengthening science and technology education at all levels will cultivate the next generation of innovators. Immigration reform to attract and retain global talent could further bolster innovation. Upgrading digital infrastructure will enable the development and adoption of new technologies. Encouraging entrepreneurship through policies supporting startups and small businesses will help spread innovation beyond large corporations. Finally, while protecting intellectual property, fostering international scientific collaboration can accelerate the pace of discovery and invention. As former President Obama stated, "In a global economy, the key to our prosperity will never be to compete by paying our workers less or building cheaper, lower-quality products. That's not our advantage. The key to our success will be to compete by developing new products, by generating new industries, by maintaining our role as the world's engine of scientific discovery and technological innovation." The innovation gap represents a significant challenge to America's future economic prosperity and global leadership. If the U.S. fails to maintain its innovative edge, it risks losing its position as the world's leading economy. Addressing this challenge will require sustained effort and investment, but the potential rewards, economic growth, job creation, and global influence, are enormous. The political paralysis. The most intractable problem facing the U.S. economy is the increasing political polarization that makes addressing these challenges nearly impossible. The widening ideological divide between the two major political parties has led to gridlock, preventing the implementation of necessary reforms and undermining confidence in the U.S. economy at home and abroad. Partisan gridlock has repeatedly brought the government to the brink of shutdown and debt default. While often resolved at the last minute, these political crises create uncertainty that can dampen economic growth and shake investor confidence. Former Defense Secretary James Mattis wrote in his resignation letter in 2018, "We must do everything possible to advance an international order that is most conducive to our security, prosperity, and values, and we are strengthened in this effort by the solidarity of our alliances." His words highlight the broader implications of America's internal political divisions. Political paralysis casts a long shadow over America, hindering progress on critical issues and eroding public trust. Deep-seated disagreements on fiscal policy, particularly taxes and spending, lead to recurring budget crises and prevent meaningful long-term planning. This constant bickering creates economic uncertainty and hampers the nation's ability to address its growing debt. Infrastructure, despite its recognized importance, remains in a state of disrepair. The inability to reach a consensus on funding and priorities stalls essential upgrades to roads, bridges, and public transportation systems. Healthcare policy remains a contentious battleground, with each party championing vastly different approaches. This endless back and forth creates uncertainty for businesses, individuals, and healthcare providers. Climate change, an existential threat, is also mired in political division. The lack of consensus on tackling this challenge hinders the development of a coherent, long-term energy and environmental policy. In the realm of trade, policy shifts with each new administration, creating volatility for businesses engaged in international commerce. Despite widespread agreement that the immigration system is broken, deep political divisions prevent any meaningful reform. This leaves millions of people in legal limbo and hampers economic growth. The political paralysis in the U.S. is a complex problem with serious consequences for the nation's future. The inability to find common ground on critical issues hinders progress, creates uncertainty, and fosters a sense of disillusionment among the electorate. You might think, but hasn't American democracy always been messy? While political disagreement is a natural part of democracy, the level of polarization in recent years is unprecedented in modern times. The Pew Research Center has documented a steady increase in partisan antipathy over the past 2 decades, with members of each party increasingly viewing the other as a threat to the nation's well-being. Extreme partisanship in the U.S. hinders its ability to address critical economic threats and erodes its global leadership role. This political dysfunction fosters policy uncertainty, making it difficult for businesses to invest and grow. It also hampers the government's effectiveness in responding to economic challenges, leading to fiscal irresponsibility and a ballooning national debt. The resulting loss of global confidence undermines America's economic stability and influence. Missed opportunities for growth, such as infrastructure investment, further compound the problem. Moreover, political divisions often exacerbate social tensions and economic inequality. In short, extreme partisanship poses a serious threat to America's economic future and its position in the world. Addressing the entrenched political paralysis in the U.S. is daunting, but there are potential paths forward. Reforming the electoral system through measures like ranked choice voting or nonpartisan primaries could encourage more moderate candidates and reduce the power of extreme factions. Campaign finance reform could help loosen the grip of big money on politics, ensuring that public interests are prioritized over special interests. Promoting media literacy and critical thinking skills can combat the spread of misinformation and help citizens make informed decisions. A renewed focus on civic education can foster a deeper understanding of democratic processes and the importance of compromise. Highlighting and celebrating successful bipartisan initiatives could help shift the political culture towards cooperation and problem-solving. Former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor once said, "The practice of democracy is not passed down through the gene pool. It must be taught and learned anew by each generation of citizens." Her words underscore the ongoing work required to maintain a healthy democratic system. The political paralysis facing the United States represents a significant threat to its economic future. Overcoming this challenge will require a renewed commitment to democratic values, a willingness to compromise, and a recognition of the common interests that unite all Americans. Without addressing this fundamental issue, tackling the nation's other economic challenges will remain an uphill battle. As we've seen, the U.S. economy's challenges are numerous and complex. From the crushing national debt to the erosion of manufacturing and educational shortcomings, the looming retirement crisis, innovation gap to political paralysis, America faces a perfect storm of economic headwinds. These issues are interconnected, each exacerbating the others in a complex web of cause and effect. National debt limits the government's ability to invest in education and infrastructure. The decline in manufacturing contributes to income inequality and regional economic disparities. The retirement crisis threatens to strain government resources further. The innovation gap could undermine future economic growth, and overarching is a political system seemingly incapable of addressing these challenges effectively. Yet it's important to remember that the United States has faced and overcome seemingly insurmountable pitfalls. From the Great Depression to the Cold War, from the Civil Rights Movement to the space race, America has shown resilience and adaptability in the face of adversity. The question is whether the USA can summon the political will and national unity necessary to address these issues before it's too late. America reinvent itself, finding new sources of economic dynamism and social cohesion? We're left with more questions than answers as we conclude this exploration of America's economic challenges and eventual fall. Will the U.S. be able to rein in its debt before it spirals out of control? And perhaps most crucially, can the political system overcome its paralysis to address these pressing issues? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you find this analysis illuminating, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with others. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.